All right. I'm excited about this. I love you guys. This is also recording. So if you ever miss, or if you just like, it's so much good content, you want to come back, it's probably not that great. But if you want to come back to it and look at some of that stuff, I'm going to send that video out. It's a YouTube video on the Messenger thread. Guys, sorry for the last minute things. You know how it goes when you're like, someone else coming? When you're starting to ramp it up and you just keep getting content. Guess how many hours of sleep I had last night?
3.
Like 2.
Yeah, maybe probably 2.
No, so it's rare that I just lay awake and stuff keeps popping in, and then if you think you're gonna forget it, you will. There's a seat right up here, Tamika. I hate the idea of you people sitting in the back and me not being able to see them. Luckily, I can see these guys. But they just kept coming. And one thing I've learned, leadership principle, if you don't already have it, nothing special, just super, life hack. If you can't sleep because you're thinking of a million different things, I've learned that if you just put it on the external hard drive, sorry, it's not literal. There's no external hard drive for your brain, but you can write it down on your notes app or something like that, just to put it off your brain and know that you're not going to forget it. That thing, like, no one ever told me that. And so when I heard it, I was like, oh, that seems like common sense. But it's the common sense things that we miss that enable us to move forward effectively. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, Craig Rochelle. It's the most recent one. No, it wasn't Craig Rochelle's leadership podcast. It was on Carey Nieuwhof leadership podcast. And Craig Rochelle was talking about efficiency. Craig Rochelle is a pastor of Life Church, the biggest church in the United States. And he's gotten to this point, and this is what he talked about. He hired an efficiency coach. I don't know if that's what he called it, but essentially that's what it was. You get to this point where you're pulled in so many directions that you need to become more and more efficient if you're ever going to accomplish the mission. It's not necessarily a selfish thing. It can be selfish, but it's actually helpful for those around you, for you to be as efficient as possible. And I was listening to that and really processing through what that looked like or could look like in my life, processing through what about that would be helpful in your life. So today we're going to talk about personal rhythms. But before we jump into that, I have a couple questions. And what I want you to do is, in your group of 3, or whoever's on the ground, 3, perfect. Thank you, Jesus. In your group of 3, you got to wake up to get this class. These 3 questions, we'll do them one at a time. Let me kind of guide each question, and once you're done answering a question, I'll bring us back. And then you guys on Zoom also answer this question. I'm going to go ahead and mute my side of it. Why are you in this group? Like, what's your goal through this group? Could be to be a leader. It could be something radically different. Maybe you just want to know more Bible. Maybe you just want to get up super early in the morning on a regular basis. So this is a good excuse to do it. I mean, that's why I started CrossFit. It forced me to get up early, and then I have 2 extra hours in the morning to spend with my wife and kid. Whereas when I get home at night, he pretty much has to go to bed when I get home. So it's just super basic stuff like that for me. This is an excuse for me. Not like, this is cool for y'all. I think it'll be helpful. I'm putting a lot of work into it, but it expends my creative energy, and I really benefit from it. So thank you guys for being objects of my personal affection for myself. That's it. That's what this is. All right, so why are you in this group? Y'all can talk about it in your little groups, and I'll give you a few minutes to do so.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
If we just kind of want to take turns and just speak about why we're in this group. Whoever wants to go first.
I'm in the group just to learn and have growth as a leader. I've been a leader of the usher team for quite some time, and I think you always have rooms for growth. So I'm just hoping that I can grow in a way that God leads.
So I would like one more from, make sure y'all are muted, okay? One more from the room. Abba.
Well, yeah, I joined because I thought it would be nice to go through like a Bible study. It's been a while since I've actually like gone through, read something, and then tried to think, okay, how am I going to decipher this? What does this mean to me? and just being in this type of setting. I haven't been in this type of setting in a while, so I think it's kind of neat to study with everyone at the same time, see how this goes, different experience, and I'm kind of excited for that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's really important for you to understand why you're coming in here. If you don't set goals, I don't know if you've ever been to the weight room. You should. It's fun. No, it's not. But if I go to the weight room and I haven't decided what I'm gonna do before I step into the room, I won't get anything done. I'll grab my phone and I'll start looking at stupid stuff on Twitter or whatever. Don't use Twitter. Just delete it off your phone. It's not helpful. I've got another question, and I want you to talk about this in your groups. And again, we'll do kind of the same formula today. 3 responses, like in front of everybody. But talk about this in your group. What is one thing you gained from the Mark video that I asked you guys to watch, or the 16 chapters that I asked you to read over the last 2 days? I know it was a lot. I love intensity. It's super fun. And if you didn't read it, just be honest with them so that they can look at you judgmentally. All right, cool. Let's do this. Did y'all hear all that on Zoom? Someone just type yes if you're good. I'm going to mute myself.
Yes, we heard it, Matt.
That becomes hardened as like the disciples.
Hey guys, let's bring it back.
So, excuse me.
Hope y'all had enough time. Make sure y'all are muted on the Zoom. Just reminders, regular reminders. I'd love to hear 3 more things. We might get to Zoom eventually, but y'all showed up today, so I want to reward that. Let's go, Vic.
Okay, fine. So for me, what I got from reading Mark or listening to it, because I was more inspirational.
Hey, smart way to do it.
Of course, yeah, work smart.
That's how they would have listened.
Say what?
That's how they would have done it.
What I got?
90% of the people couldn't read back
Oh, for real?
then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know,
Anyway, so
change your game, man.
what I got from it was just how the disciples often kind of question Jesus, but like not in a bad way, just because like they were confused, because in their head they thought that like Jesus was this I guess lack of a better word, political like activist who's going to bring about this change and like save from oppression, when really what he came to do was save them from eternal condemnation, and not understanding what Jesus actually came to do. Oftentimes, the way they acted was, kind of, yes, uncharacteristics, just because like they did not fully understand, what Jesus' purpose on earth really was. And it just had me thinking about how at times, I may think that, Jesus, that God is trying to do one thing, or like he ought to do one thing, when really there's something greater, or something different, or something greater that, he wants to do. And, as we see in scriptures, the disciples and like everybody else, they thought that, Jesus was going to do like this external work, when really he came to do an internal work.
That's true.
And so it's just had me thinking about how oftentimes we think that, God needs to change like, whatever it is that's within like, our external like realm, when really, he's coming to change whatever's on the inside of us. Because once he changes what's inside, we're able to deal with whatever it is with the problem that's on the outside.
That's great. That's great. 2 more. One of them needs to be the video.
Video.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Can I share it twice in one morning?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So
You
mine
raised your
was
hand.
a little different actually than what I shared with them, but it was the second miracle that happened at Jericho when he was leaving Jericho, and the blind men were like shouting out, have mercy on us. And Jesus came up and he stopped. The disciples were like, no, we don't have time for this. But he's like, yeah, let's stop. And he was like, what is it that you want me to do for you? And the disciples were like, are you kidding? They're blind. Like, their sign says I'm blind. Obviously they want to see. But Jesus asked them that question not because he didn't know, but because he wanted them to define specifically what it is that they wanted him to do. And I think for us, he wants us not to say, if you could please move this mountain for me. He wants us to say, do this, and here's, it's not if, it's when, right? And he even said in there, it's not if, it's when. And so some of the things that I've been praying about, it's like I haven't really believed because scientifically it don't make sense, like my dad's mechanical heart valve. It's like I've been praying to remove that. And it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. But God said, it's not if, it's when. You got to be specific and define what you want. You can't have a vague prayer. You got to have a specific prayer. Because healing, we pray for healing, that can take place on the other side of earth in heaven. We got to be specific. If you want healing here or there, how do you want that?
Yeah, I was rereading again last night, and just the blind Bartimaeus story. It it bothered me on an opposite end. It's like, pray without doubting, pray without doubting. Pray. That doesn't happen for me. So, yeah, no, that's a real good comment. One more on the video, though.
I got the video.
Oh, go ahead, Edwin. No, she hasn't done it yet. So go ahead, Edwin.
Okay. So I love the little cartoon thing. That was just like, that was so cool.
Sorry, before you start, Bible Project, they're bosses.
Yeah.
I have almost full confidence in everything that they put out. They have videos real helpful for intro for a huge portion of the books of the Old Testament, New Testament. So anytime I'm starting even, and I've got a lot of education in this, like it's super helpful to jump in and do it. The Bible Project. They've got podcasts where they talk about the videos, and then on YouTube they have the actual videos. Go ahead, Edwin. Sorry.
Well, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I like the way they broke down into Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. So in Act 1, the highlight is kind of leaving the disciples were confused, like what is really going on here. And then in Act 2, they were still looking for that military leader, and that Jesus was just going to get away Roman oppression, but he actually came as a servant leader. And then in Act 3, this is a sacrificial system, not a military coup. And the Roman soldier was the first one to say that Jesus was the Son of God.
Yeah. What I find interesting in Mark, super helpful video. What I found interesting in Mark as I read through it is the ones he came to never get it. Like you see the macro picture of him going to his hometown and saying that I come to my hometown and no one sees me for who I am, obviously paraphrase. And then, but you see the demons, you see the centurion, you see all these different people who aren't part of who Jesus came to serve. Ultimately, they get it at a level that the Jews at the time don't. And so it's definitely an interesting paradigm to look at in the book of Mark. It's a great comment. On your comment, Jesus makes statements that are confusing intentionally. And I think one of our sessions is going to be on just, I don't know if I'll call it confusing language or speaking in parables or what, but I see this in a lot of great leaders is they they provoke the people they're talking to by putting questions in such a way or putting commentary in such a way that it forces them to do some internal dialogue and processing before the question comes about. Like when you look at a parable, the way that you interpret a parable kind of depends on where you're at in life. And so Jesus positions it, are you the lost son? Are you the older brother? Or are you the father in this scenario? Are you the sheep? Are you the shepherd? Are you the staff? Like the parables enable you, though they're confusing, though it's hard to understand, they enable you to locate yourself within it and move forward at your current spiritual capacity. And so I just, I was eating it up last night. And I've read Mark several times, and every time I read it, it's just so beneficial. But what I want to do throughout this study, if you will, it's going to be 7 total weeks. This is kind of an intro week. Bear with us a little bit this morning, trying to figure out technological things, and then just making sure we get on the right track and understanding what the expectations are. But over the next 6 weeks, we're going to highlight 6 leadership moments throughout Jesus' ministry. I have a couple criteria that I set, otherwise I'd be completely in trouble. I got through the first 3 chapters last week, coming up with potential conversation topics for this room, and I was at 15 by chapter 2.5. And so in order to narrow down, I started just adding criteria. And I heard something recently on the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast. He was talking about the question he would ask different people he was interviewing on his podcast. He would ask them, what's the non-intuitive thing that you do that actually helps you immensely? Does that make sense? So you'll look at a person, say Jesus in this scenario, and you look at his entire ministry. In Matthew and Luke, it's real easy to look at all the things that he says. But in Mark, he says a little bit less, and you see how people responded to him. And so when you look at Jesus, and what I'm trying to do through this study is look at the things that he does that we haven't heard preached about a million times. The things that are in Scripture in Mark that you haven't overlooked a million times, or that you have overlooked but you haven't looked at a million times. The things that Jesus did that aren't highlighted, but they're a natural part of his daily rhythm. Does that make sense? And so that's what I wanted to kind of intro today. It's intuitive, but you don't think about it. And so therefore it's non-intuitive. And so I want to talk today about personal rhythms. personal rhythms. I want to bury the lead on that last question, talking about the personality test, because I really believe that if you truly know yourself, maybe it's what you're called to do, maybe it's your personality, maybe it's just your current life situation. But if you have a good or an acute acumen for where you're at in life right now, personality, gifting, situation, then I really believe you're going to be at your optimal level of finding a good rhythm. I think it'll just be really good for you. For me, I struggle with finding a good rhythm because this job, just to be real with you, one night someone's having a struggle and I'm having a phone conversation, and the next morning I'm doing a 6 a.m. group study, going through deep aspects of the book of Mark. Like, it just ebbs and flows. One season we're doing Easter, another we're doing Christmas, another we're not doing a whole lot of anything. So then I'm trying to build in something so that I still feel energized through a more boring season. So I'm having to learn how to operate within a particular rhythm. This group is born out of me trying to find a good rhythm in my life. I'm starting this thing just based on the experiment in the fall. Raise your hand if you were here in the fall. Cool, I love it. In the fall, we started this. It was an 8-week session, and it's a little long for me, so I shortened it to 7 weeks. And I found that I got a lot of energy, and I knew there was an end to it, so that when we went into the Christmas season, I wasn't going to be weighed down with both this group and the Christmas season busyness. So I found that doing a micro group, 8-week group, really fits my rhythm. And if you notice, at the end of this group, we're going to be going into Easter. And I might do another 5 to 7 week micro group at the end of April and the beginning of May. But this fits within my rhythm. And if you look at Jesus, you can tell that he had an acute awareness and understanding of what he was called to do, of who he was, and of the situation that he was entering into in the world. He knew what was going on. And so it enabled him to develop an effective rhythm. If you look at Mark 5:30, I'm not going to be there long, but in Mark 5:30, I just was struck by the reality when Jesus is walking in the streets. He's just recently started this ministry, and you know this story. This woman who had a hemorrhage of 12 years. I thought that was it. This woman who had a hemorrhage of 12 years, she touches his cloak, his garment, and what the text says is Jesus noticed that, anyone know what I'm calling? Jesus noticed that power went out from him. And I was struck by that, and it's like, man, if I could just have an awareness at that detailed of a level, right? At that detail, to know what drains me, what energizes me, and what I need to do to feel energized, even during a season where I could probably feel very drained. If I can understand who I am and step into a good daily, weekly, monthly, seasonal rhythm, then I can be much more effective for those around me as a leader. And you know it, anyone ever served under a leader who's going through a hard time and they can't manage it? Anybody? I'm not saying I'm currently doing that. Jordan's great. But when he has a kid, I bet it's going to change up a little bit. He's going to have to figure out a new rhythm, and I've got to be there watching what's going on. So there's a level where it's so frustrating when you're under a leader who doesn't have an awareness of what drains him and what energizes him or her. It's frustrating. And the people you lead are going to be equally, if not more, frustrated when you don't have an awareness of your own personal rhythms, what energizes you, what drains you. And I want us to get to that level. And I guess I'll just say leadership is having an acute awareness of what energizes you and what drains you so that you can find your personal rhythm. That was long. Leadership is finding your own personal rhythm. I wrote this down because I'm a drummer. Anyone else in here play instruments? Cool. Not a lot of you. Well, I'll give you a life lesson on drumming. Drumming is a funny thing. You can't make a full song with it, but if you mess up during a song, everybody notices it. And that's what I noticed when I was drumming, that if you're on beat, if you're on rhythm, then everything feels good and it feels full. But if you mess up just a little bit and get off keel, get off rhythm, get off tempo, everybody notices it and it ruins the entire track. And so for us, as we step into leadership of our homes, we step into leadership at our jobs, here at church, regardless of what capacity you're leading. If you don't maintain a good rhythm, if you get off track just a little bit, then it affects the entire outcome of a team, of a family unit, of the people that are under you at your job. I'm just thinking about V right now. She has, how many people is it? You can type it in and I'll tell them later when I mess up. It's like 15 to 20 people under her. She's a marketing director. She has 20 people under her. And if her rhythms are off, then it's going to throw every single other person off. And then all of a sudden you have chaos where there could be peace and enjoyment. That's how crucial it is to find an effective rhythm. I said drumming is a lot like life. It feels good when you get it right, yet ruins the song when you lose the beat. It's the same way when it comes to our breathing. You breathe in, breathe out. See, this is psychological, right? Every time you listen to one of those tracks, it's like breathe in. It tells you when to breathe. It tells you when to breathe out. And then you feel peaceful by the end of the 20-second video. And then you feel stupid because you had to listen to a video in order to breathe. But if you don't breathe effectively, your heart starts beating more. Your body's affected. If your heart is arrhythmic, then there are a lot of other things about your system that are impacted. If you don't find your rhythm effectively, the entire system's going to start shutting down eventually. And so we need to figure out how to refresh, restart, refine our rhythm. And I'm just trying to prove to you how crucial it is because a lot of us don't have a rhythm. I'm not saying you have to have a 6 a.m. rhythm, but the reality is this is a new thing. And if you don't have a 6 a.m. rhythm, guess what's going to happen? You're going to wake up and need coffee because you're not used to this rhythm. It throws you off. And this is a good thing, but at the same time, if it doesn't fit within a daily rhythm, this becomes an obligation as opposed to an opportunity for growth. A rhythm is so crucial. And like I said, this group is birthed out of my own understanding of my rhythms. And so there are a couple things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the window, energy gained, energy lost. And then we'll get into questions in a little bit. The window. This window is 8 weeks. It's a micro group. It goes into my season. And if you understand your rhythm, then it'll enable you to choose different, what did I say? Oh, 7 weeks, sorry. Last fall was 8 weeks. But this 8 weeks, like I said, is born out of my desire to find an effective rhythm. And so I want to ask you, don't say it out loud, but just process. What about your life right now needs to be adjusted? How can you find a window? Pastor Stevens said it a couple of years ago, end of 2016, he had a Work Your Window series. The reality is there are seasons where God is present. He's always present, but he's present at a deeper level. And then there are seasons where you're resting and where you're not doing as much. If you look at Jesus's ministry, and I found the non-intuitive thing that Jesus did was he regularly, within his daily rhythm, whether people were grabbing him, whether people were staying out there not eating or bringing food for 3 days and starving themselves because apparently they don't have enough common sense to bring bread with them. And Jesus is standing there because John the Baptist just died and he's trying to mourn and rest, but these people come out. So Jesus's rhythm typically included time in the wilderness. It typically included time to pray. It says he arose early in the morning to pray. Right before Jesus goes to the cross, he's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he encourages his disciples to pray. Prayer was in his normal rhythm. Separation, not for the purpose of isolation, but separation for the purpose of engagement with his creator, God, right? His Father. That's why he separated. Even if you think about the reality of the situation when he came to Jerusalem, because y'all read through the entire thing, and I can talk about any little bit of the book of Mark because you read it, right? Amen. So this isn't foreign to you. When he comes to Jerusalem, where does he stay? Somebody. Where does he stay when he goes to Jerusalem? Maybe it's because Lazarus is his buddy, but Bethany is about 2 miles from Jerusalem, and Bethany was at the bottom of a hill. In order to get to Jerusalem, you had to hike up a hill. It was wilderness. Then you go down into Jerusalem, where the crowds were, where people were following him, and apparently Pharisees were trying to mess him over and kill him. But he stayed in Bethany with some friends and far enough away from the crowd that he could get some time, segmented from the large population of people that needed it. In Jesus's normal personal rhythm was going out, prayer, and time with family and friends. That was within Jesus's normal rhythm. And it doesn't highlight it too often. It highlights it more than you would expect because it's not a huge part of his ministry, but it's a huge part of his rhythm. Prayer, 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 Separation, separation, separation. Every time Jesus tells his disciples to pull the boat up, it's because he wants a quick escape to get away from the crowds, because he knows that though it may energize him, power goes out from him, and he needs to re-energize by engaging with God. It's so important. And Jesus knew his window was going to be about 3 years. It's going to be about 3 years. I always wondered why Jesus waited 30 years to jump into the ministry. And I'm going to talk more about it next week. But after John the Baptist gets put in prison, then Jesus launches in. And a window of 3 years, he utilized it. Jesus worked it. Jesus knew it because he knew his rhythms. And his rhythms for that 30 years built up to where he could effectively minister to people, being energized and being drained over 3 years. Jesus knew his window. The second thing, not just window is a time thing. Energy gained. What energizes you? What makes you feel better? What energizes me is, stuff that I incorporated into this group. Sorry, sucks for you if you don't like it. I like intensity. I love it. I love the Bible. It gives me energy to read the Bible. I like going deep. I like engaging with people at a deeper level. I like seeing people grow. I'm an individualizer if you look at StrengthsFinder. And individualization is when you think you have a unique acumen for the potential in somebody else. And all you do is you're driven to bring that out. And so for each of you, especially if I know you, I'm looking like a super judgmental punk, but I'm looking, trying to see the potential God has placed in you. And I lay awake at night trying to figure how to bring that out. Like, that's what I love to do. So when I can bring a group of people in here, ask them questions and challenge them so that the needle's moved in their lives, that's what I enjoy doing. So that's how I orchestrated it. And so for you, when it comes to what energizes you, you might, if you have your notes or a phone, get a list of what you do now that energizes you. Like, what do you do that you don't have to think about? What do you do that you enjoy? For some of you, it may be music. For some of you, it may be doing research on the computer about things that no one cares about. For some reason, I get energized when I watch Jeopardy, even though none of the information has helped me in my normal everyday church life. I get energized by it. And so I feel energized by doing something that may drain somebody else. God's created us that way. So in finding your rhythm, not only do you have to look at the window of time and start utilizing that effectively, you have to figure out what energizes you during that window of time.
That's great.
What energizes you? Take a second, think about it, write 2 to 3 things down. It may be crocheting. I'm a crap crocheter, so I don't do that stuff. What is it that energizes you? Is it people, or do people drain you? Is it time alone, or does that drain you? And you have to be around people in order to feel better. I'm not saying get your identity from people. I'm saying that it's just helpful to understand what energizes you. Like this group, I love getting to utilize my creative energy. I love the challenge of getting everybody up at 6 a.m. in the morning. I consider it a victory that 26 people showed up here this morning just to learn something new. I don't think it has anything to do with me. I think it has everything to do with what God's placed in you during this window of time, because you are going to feel energized through this. But that energizes me in itself. I like the feeling of making someone work out. That's it, straight up. I remember this time. I was in college. I was in a little bit better shape than I am now, not in great shape now. And my friend Steven, who drinks energy drinks like water, he said he wanted to work out with me one day. I didn't know energy drinks messed up your liver like that, but he said he wanted to work out with me, and I was in really good shape. I was running triathlons and stuff like that. And so we went and did a gym workout, and I got halfway through the first portion of my first set, and he threw up outside. And that sucks, and people talk crap about me after that because I went too hard on him. But internally, I just felt, that's awesome. That's what I felt. You guys would feel horrible potentially about making someone else throw up, but for some reason, I felt good about that. That energizes me, but it doesn't energize you. I'm learning that it's okay to be me. It's okay to make people throw up if they're the ones who got into the gym with me on their own volition, right? and I can do what I want in here. I'm not going to do anything that's against God or anything like that, but you came here of your own volition. So the stuff I put on the track, you can do it or you can't. If it drains you, tell me about it. We'll figure out a new way to do it, because I'm an individualizer and I want you to reach your potential. But, this is how I roll, and I love doing it. I'm a challenger according to the Enneagram, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I love challenging people just for the sake of doing it. That's what it says, at least. And so everybody on the staff says, Matt, why are you challenging for the sake of challenging? And I'm like, no, I have unique acumen in this situation, and I think it's a positive direction for us to go. I'm not just challenging the challenge, but it appears like it. That's what I like to do. And so challenging gets me up in the morning. Challenging helps me to enjoy my job better. If there wasn't anything to fix, y'all would be looking at a miserable punk right now. But there's stuff to fix, so I enjoy it. I'm an ENTJ on the Myers-Briggs, which they say is like a field marshal, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, a general, or a CFO or CEO. Like,
Sergeant.
yeah, a sergeant.
Before you even said
Like, I love that stuff. If there's something to take over, let's do it. I want to do it. And there's so many things to accomplish. See, this is what gives me energy. And I'm staying so long on this so that you can start thinking about what gives you energy. Because if you never get there, then you're not going to be able to effectively manage the window of time that God gives you to operate at your optimal rate or level. Jesus, he got a kick out of challenging the status quo. I mean, when he calls his disciples, what does he start with? Hey, cast that net to the other side of the boat after they've been fishing all night. Like it's this little challenge, but it's kind of a, if you should do this even though you're going to be mad at me for doing this. Like, that's how Jesus operated. He picked grain on the Sabbath, even though he knew the Pharisees were watching him to catch him up. He healed that dude on the Sabbath. He said, stretch out your hand. And he also, just for the sake of doing it, said it's easier to say your sins are forgiven rather than saying you're healed. Like, what do you think he did that? Jesus wasn't stupid. He was 30 years old. I'm not stupid. I know what I'm doing when I say stuff like that. Jesus did it intentionally. I don't know if it gave him energy to challenge, but it must have. It must have. But what drained him was the people not fully understanding different aspects. Like the times you see him frustrated in the book of Mark is when he has to re-explain to the disciples who should understand what he's at, where he's going. He says, some say you're Elijah, some say you're John the Baptist reincarnated. I bet Jesus is sitting there at Caesarea Philippi like, oh, my goodness. Give me a break. I need to go up to the mountain and pray again, hang out with Elijah and Moses. I need to do this. But there are things that gave Jesus energy. And even if you look at parables, creativity. I don't know why he cast demons into the pigs, but it's funny. It's creative. And they ran off a cliff, which is kind of nihilistic. So it's just, I don't know what gave Jesus energy fully, but he knew, and he operated in that state. And then he went and took a break when it got too much because people were too needy.
And you know, it was interesting too that the demons asked to go into the pigs, and he granted their wish. It's like if you ask, even when demons ask, you know, we don't ask. We don't have, and that
I know. It's like they're in pain, and I need to go into another object. But I don't know why they ran off the cliff. It's like Jesus is sitting there like, this is a humorous situation. Let's do it. And it's like, goodness gracious, I don't get him. But he was confusing, and it was in some way energizing to him. But Jesus knew himself. We obviously didn't understand him, and the disciples sure didn't understand him. So it's your window of time. You got to know what energizes you, and then you got to know what drains you. You got to know what drains you. And so I put energy spent is something you really need to process. Like, what drains you? And if you don't understand what drains you, you're going to keep doing it. You're going to feel drained, and you're like, I need more naps. And you don't need more naps. You need to stop having the same conversation with the same person every single day that makes you feel negative. And it's draining you, but you think you need a nap, and then you fall into depression because you've been taking too many naps and your serotonin levels aren't the way they need to be, right? So you fall into the wrong pattern because you're doing something that drains you, but you haven't identified what drains you. It's so crucial for us to understand what spins us or what spins our energy. For me, I love mornings. That's my best energy every single morning. And a lot of you're so used to sleeping at this point. I'm not judging you for it, but you think, oh, that's too early. That's the main comment I got when I invited people to do this group. That's so early. But what I know about leaders is that they get up early, utilize their best energy in the morning, then they have the rest of the day to really lollygag and do the less mentally draining work. Because they get up in the mornings and recognize that if they try to do everything at night, like if you try to do your quiet time at night, I'm not saying it won't work. Some of you are night owls, that's great. But let's be real. Yeah, when you got YouTube, State of the Union, right? Like, I'm just kidding, that wasn't that good. But when you got these things vying for your time, then your kids, your wife who's been working all day and you've been working all day, you've got all this stuff that you want to put on, and the Bible's going to fall by the wayside because you didn't recognize that if you got up in the morning, it would energize you, and when you're doing it at night, it drains you. I'm not saying this is for everybody, but it is for me. And so it's crucial for us to recognize what drains us. Like this morning, I don't feel guilty about being gone right now. My wife's sleeping, my kid's sleeping. I don't feel guilty about this. But if I did this at night, I would feel guilty about it because I would be leaving my kid when I could be playing upstairs with his little cars that I hate because he gets them everywhere. But this would be draining if I did it in the wrong window. Sorry, I got so many notes. I need to be careful. You spend less energy on some tasks than others. I think the best leaders, the smartest individuals in my mind, are the ones who know where to put their energy. If you're just looking at a spreadsheet all day, how much is that going to drain you? Whereas if you take a little mental bandwidth and put it in a different area, maybe it would even drive the work you've been doing in this other detailed area. So if you would zoom out, recognize that certain hikes are harder than other hikes, and find the right route to get to where you want to be, then it would be helpful. Why are you climbing straight up the mountain when there's a super easy route that would just get you there? Maybe not quicker, but you wouldn't be tired by the time you get there. I've got a lot of education. I'm not bragging about it. It's just a reality. It's helpful for you to know. A lot of these books here are books that I've read in the past that I just refer back to. So developing content in the Bible doesn't take me too long because I've spent a lot of time in it. So if I'm going to develop a group or if I'm going to do something with my free time, I'm going to do something that gets me there quickly. And so when it comes to groups, I just go heavy on the biblical content because that's what I love. That's what I feel like I'm good at. With this group, I knew the little bit of energy I put into it would give me an exponential amount of energy back. And it's going to pay dividends because I'm going to see what God produces from it. In the Fall E group, I think 10 or 11 of the people in that Fall E group are leaders. Some of them were leaders already, but a lot of them weren't. And so I just get excited to know that what we did over 8 weeks is now paying dividends on our campus. That's exciting to me. And I don't even know what happens in their personal life at this point. It could be paying dividends there. So it's just crucial for us to understand what spends us and what gives us energy. And I'll end with this on energy spent. It says in chapter 1, verse 35, in the early morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, went away to a secluded place, and was praying there. He knew that would energize him, and he knew that prayer in the morning would enable him to get through the day more effectively, so that when that woman with the hemorrhage came and grabbed his garment, that energy would leave him, but not only would he have a better acumen for that energy leaving, it probably wouldn't take as much as it would have had he not woke up in the morning to do that. And the problems that you're having, the people that are draining you, the stuff that you're struggling with at work that just gives you a migraine. I got a migraine yesterday. I went and took a 2-hour nap. It sucks. But the things that are really draining you, what could you adjust at the beginning of your day to make it to where that is less draining and potentially even energizing? Just some thoughts. And then a couple more examples I want you to just remember. I already mentioned Bethany, that Jesus went there, kind of segmented himself from the population of Jerusalem so that he could rest. I bet it was hard to walk over the palm branches on that colt and deal with all these people praising you when you know that they're going to kill you a couple weeks later, right? Or a week later. I know that's got to be difficult. Or when you're just using all your energy tossing temple tables back and forth, frustrated about the money changers and people who are selling doves when they should be giving doves, right? Like all that stuff. It's got to be draining. So he goes to Bethany. And the best situation I can think of where Jesus went and had a wilderness moment was a transfiguration. I think when he was baptized, you have a real epiphanic moment where God says, with the dove coming down, or spirit coming down, like, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. That phrase also happens again. I think that's like a reiteration to Jesus of his identity. At the transfiguration, we got Moses and Elijah, really the pillars of the Jewish faith, and then something that Jesus shining white and God saying, this is my beloved son. He recharged on the mountain, and we've got to be able to understand our energy, step into it, pick the right window, pick the right tasks and engagements that energize us, and know what drains us so that we can be effective individuals and ultimately effective leaders. And there are a couple quick things I want to say, and then we will jump into the question very quickly. And this is from Craig Rochell's Leadership Podcast. I just thought it would be helpful. I'll send you the link to it if you want to listen to it. It's only 20 minutes. There are 2 different podcasts, but he talks about the art of energy management and then the 4 types of energy. He calls these keystone habits that we can step into. I don't know. It's probably because those doors are open. Huh? Yeah, that would be really helpful. And I'll just send you the podcast so you'll listen to it. But what he says is leadership is the art of harnessing human energy to create change, to make a difference, and to get results. And he says, start by acknowledging two big ideas. You are better at some things at some times than at others. And then different tasks take different types of energy. And he asked the same question that I've asked. I think I might have gotten this from him. I'll give him credit. Whatever, who cares? God gets all the credit. He said, define two things, what drains you and what sustains you. One of the best ways to do this is through what he calls an energy audit. That is making a list of regular tasks, responsibilities, and decisions, and assign a rank to them, higher or lower. So get a list of all of your tasks, responsibilities, engagements, everything you've got, and start ranking them based on priority, or adding them, giving an added value if they give you energy, and a negative value if they drain energy. And where you come out at the end may help you decide what you need to cut, what you need to adjust, or what you need to potentially add. All right? I think this is just so helpful. He says, use your audit to figure out your rhythms. You may not be able to fully control your schedule, but try to devote time to doing things that sustains you. If you do something draining on Monday, don't load up several draining activities on Tuesday. So practical. You won't even come in on Wednesday, or you won't even want to come in on Wednesday. When you're planning your work week, consider blocking your time into categories like to do, to create, or decisions, and create a budget. And he says there are 4 different types of energy. You should definitely write these down. Physical energy. That's exercise, dieting, sleep, etc. You know when you work out and you feel better afterwards, even if you feel sore. You feel like you can get through the day more effectively. Or if you're dieting well, eating more greens than you are junk food, you feel better. The next one, mental or creative energy. That is loading up on or downloading books, podcasts, coming to groups, mental and creative. Next is emotional. I see a counselor for my emotionally focused therapy and development. I need it. I suck at emotions. My parents, they really train me when it comes to emotions. I tell my kid, hey, does that make you feel sad, mad, or angry? Sad, mad, upset, deflated. Like, we try to use all those emotion words with my son, but I never got any of that. The only word I knew was depressed and angry. That's all I knew. And so I work on my emotional development. Because if I spend my whole time attributing my emotion to anger or depression, then I take naps when I shouldn't take naps. But it's helpful for us to understand what sustains us and what drains us when it comes to our emotions. Journaling is helpful as well. Spiritual, that's Bible. What energy do you get from reading your Bible? Sometimes it's draining because you haven't taken the effort to understand some of the background. Maybe it's more energizing for you to watch a video and then read than it is for you to just start reading and get frustrated because you don't understand what you're reading. Serving. If you're not serving, you should. It gives me a lot of energy. Prayer, connection with other people. All those are so crucial. And what I'm trying to say is this. Finding your rhythm is self-serving, yes, but it's an act of generosity. As you find your rhythm, your family's going to be blessed. The people you lead are going to be blessed. Because, once you play on beat, then they can track with the tune, with the melody. It's so crucial for us to find our rhythm. And then that last question. And this is where we did the personality profile test. This is why we did it. Because I think those tests, whether it's the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs, I think next time we might do StrengthsFinder. There's a DISC assessment. We can keep going through all the micro groups. I don't care. There are a million personality tests. Maybe spiritual gifts. That would be fun. We'll take out some of them, though. They're weird. It's true. But ultimately,
Can you just the 4 types?
yeah. Sorry. There are 4 main ones. There is physical. I said mental/creative. Whatever gets your brain energy going. So mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the 4 different types. Huh?
Serving and prayer.
Oh yeah, those were just examples of a spiritual. Yeah, sorry. Could be more clear. Thanks for asking to clarify. But these personality tests help us understand ourselves at a deeper level. They will also tell you, if you read a description of them, what energizes that type of person, what drains that type of person. and then a whole lot of stuff in between. And I think it just helps you understand at a level to where you can find your rhythm. So what I want to do now is I want to split us up into our groups of 3. And that question that I wanted to ask was, what is one thing you learned about yourself from your personality exam? Let me make that more clear. What energizes you and what drains you based on that personality exam? It may have been the Enneagram for you, or it may have been the Myers-Briggs. That's okay. If you didn't take the exam, make sure you go back up on the thread and take it. So that'll help you. But talk about that for a few minutes. What energizes you? What drains you based on what you found in your personality exam? And we have about 4 minutes left on that. And I'm sorry. Anyways.
All right, cool.
Is everybody there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Does
can hear
somebody, does somebody want to go first?
I don't think my personality matched at all what mine was, so I'm going to retake it because I don't feel it totally. Even I had my husband read it, and he's like, that doesn't sound like you at all. Because mine was a mediator, but it makes it sound like I'm this. I don't know. It does. I'm going to retake mine because I don't feel like that is me at all.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it recommended, go ahead. I'm sorry. Somebody was speaking. No, maybe I'm mistaken. I think that it says that you're not supposed to really think about the answers, just kind of, what kind of comes first. I don't know if you, dissected any of those answers, but just recommendation when you retake it.
Yeah.
I think for me, mine was really spot on, and it was kind of eye-opening just how messed up I really am in some areas, and just how much that I really like, so my my personality, for example, is the console, and just realizing just how identifying it was to help me grow in some areas, that is holding me back.
Nice.
And, when we can really take an honest assessment of ourselves, then we can go to the next level and layer it in.
Really quickly, you
Sorry.
continue.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify really quickly. It is 7 o'clock. I want to honor your time. It's so huge for me to honor your time. You can continue talking, but when you need to go, you're welcome to jet. Thank you guys for being here today. We're going to be here again next week. Thank you so much for showing up early like you did. I think that makes for a way better hour experience. It went a little long today just because all the intro and stuff like that. We'll be zooming in, and it's going to be really good next week. All right. Thank you guys. You can keep chatting though.
So I want to give
See ya.
somebody else an opportunity to share. So does anybody else kind of want to share about the personality test or the Enneagram?